What if the cruise you board isn't what it seems? Real passengers have disappeared into decks no one can find. Whispers follow you down long, empty corridors, and some keys unlock more than just rooms. They open nightmares. Every story you're about to hear has been checked, verified, and traced back to real Reddit posts. This isn't fiction. These are true accounts from people who lived or barely survived the horrors aboard these ships. Stay with us until the end, subscribe to Eerie Hour, hit the bell icon, and comment below what you think happened, because some of these stories might still be happening right now. Sir, you can't be here. I froze mid-step, my sneakers gripping the polished floor like glue. The voice came from nowhere, tinny and metallic, swallowed by the low hum of the ship's engines. But no one was there. Just me, standing in a long corridor lined with numbered doors, all ending at 12. My name's Tyler Brooks, 28, freelance photojournalist from Boston. I joined this cruise for a break from deadlines, editors, and the never-ending ping of emails. I wanted some sun, cocktails, and calm sunsets over the Atlantic. Not this. I'd spent the afternoon wandering the upper decks, camera over my shoulder, taking pictures of the ship's design and life on board. That's when I saw it. A narrow stairwell, half hidden behind a maintenance door, mostly covered by a janitor's cart. My curiosity kicked in. The plaque said Deck 13, but every ship map, every directory, every printed guide I'd seen skipped straight from 12 to 14. Deck 13 didn't exist, yet here it was, right in front of me. My heart pounded. 3 soft knocks echoed from behind the door, metal against metal, slow and deliberate. I knew I shouldn't go in, but curiosity is a dangerous thing. I turned the knob. The stairwell dropped into darkness. Each step groaned under my weight. The smell hit me. Damp metal, salt water, and something faintly burnt, like overheated wiring. I turned on my camera light. The stairs spiraled endlessly down. I counted 50 steps, then another 100. Finally, a corridor stretched ahead, dimly lit by flickering fluorescent bulbs that buzzed weakly, struggling to light a place that didn't want to be seen. Doors lined both sides. Every single one was numbered 1301, 1302, repeating over and over like a broken record. A voice called my name softly. Tyler. I spun around. No one was there. The floor creaked behind me. A shadow passed across a doorway far down the hall. I lifted my camera and zoomed in. A woman stood there, her pale hair stuck to her face. Her uniform looked like the crew's, but wrong. Torn edges, name tag scratched off. I should have turned around. I didn't. I stepped closer, and she vanished. Just gone. The lights flickered harder. I heard whispers, dozens of them, muttering names, numbers, and laughter that didn't sound human. My pulse spiked. The hallway warped ahead of me, doors shifting slightly, tilting at odd angles. Something rattled near my feet, a brass key, heavy, old, engraved with the number 13. I picked it up. Instantly, the air turned cold. My breath fogged in front of me. Behind me, the corridor changed again. A door appeared, one I hadn't noticed before. It opened silently. From the darkness, a voice whispered, "They're waiting for you." I panicked and turned to run, but the stairs no longer led up. They went down, endlessly. Each turn dragged me deeper. Time twisted. My watch spun wildly, seconds skipping and rewinding. The loudspeaker buzzed again. Deck 13 is restricted. Unauthorized personnel will be escorted. The tone was strange, mocking, robotic. No crew came. Only me, trapped in an endless stairwell, while whispers followed from behind the closed doors. I checked my camera. I had been recording Taz. He whole time. But every frame was static. White noise, distorted faces pressed against the screen, whispering. The key glowed faintly in my hand, shining even in the dark. I walked toward one door. 1307. It creaked open. The air smelled like salt and rot. Inside, dozens of passengers stood still, eyes blank, bodies stiff. They didn't move, just stared. One turned and smiled. I backed away, shaking. The key felt heavy in my pocket, almost comforting, yet wrong. Every time I touched it, a chill ran through me. The stairwell I'd climbed earlier now felt like a memory, something that might never have existed. I walked deeper instead. The same numbers repeated. 1301, 1302, 1307 again. I stopped at 1307 and knocked. The metal was cold. A whisper came from inside. Tyler. My name, spoken by many voices overlapping, some begging softly, others screaming. The lights flickered, shadows twisting across the walls. The corridor seemed to breathe, stretching and shrinking around me. I aimed my camera, but every playback was corrupted, static, flickers of faces pressed against doors. I needed proof, something real. I started recording voice notes describing everything. If you're hearing this, take a second to subscribe to Eerie Hour. I know it sounds strange, but if anyone finds this, I want the truth preserved. The whispers grew louder. From the far end, a door opened and light spilled out. The same woman stood there, in her torn uniform, eyes fixed on me. "You shouldn't be here," she said, her voice distorted and robotic. "Who are you?" I asked. "Why are they here?" She tilted her head. "Deck 13 doesn't exist for you. For us, it never ends." I turned back. Shadows moved behind every door. Faces appeared in the glass panels. Passengers who had vanished days ago. A man in a perfect crew uniform appeared at the end of the hallway. His eyes were wrong, empty. He handed me a clipboard and disappeared. On it was a manifest. Every line blank except one, my name at the top. My stomach dropped. I'd be in logged, marked as present on a deck that shouldn't exist. I tried to run, but the corridor twisted, doors sliding, walls bending. My camera caught everything, but the playback was chaos, static and faces that weren't there before. Footsteps echoed behind me. I ran. Something chased me, unseen. I stumbled and hit the wall. The brass key glowed faintly again, pulling me toward room 1307. The door was open now. Inside stood more passengers, hundreds, silent, pale, half-submerged in dark water that seeped through the floor. Their eyes were empty, watching. I realized it wasn't a deck at all. It was a trap, a place that fed on anyone who found it. My body trembled from exhaustion. I hid in the shadows, whispering every detail into my recorder. Every sound echoed louder. Taps, creaks, murmurs. My ears rang. Then she appeared again, the woman in the torn uniform. She looked straight at me. "You want to leave?" she asked. "Take the key, but remember it chooses when you leave." I clutched it tightly. My pulse pounded. I had a choice. Go deeper or vanish like the rest. I chose forward. Each step felt heavier. The air thickened like the deck itself didn't want me there. The same numbers repeated, looping endlessly. 1301, 1304, 1310, then back to 1301. My head spun. Then I saw them. Passengers pressed against glass. Pale faces staring blankly. Some I recognized. Some were strangers. A man stepped forward holding a red suitcase. He looked right at me. He smiled, but there was no warmth, only accusation. "You shouldn't be here." My hands shook. The camera slipped as I stumbled back, trying not to look, but I could feel all of them still watching. The lens captured every single face, but when I checked the footage later, something was wrong. They all blinked at the same time, too fast, too precise, like the entire deck was alive and watching me. I tried calling out, my voice trembly. "Ling, who are you? What is this place?" There was no answer, only the faint sound of the deck breathing, soft creaks, and the slow dripping of water in the dark. The brass key in my pocket glimmered faintly, almost pulsing, and something deep inside me told me it was important. Every few minutes, one door, always 1307, opened just a crack on its own. Water seeped from beneath it, thick and dark, slithering across the floor like it had a mind of its own. Then came the whispers again, louder this time, more desperate. "Turn back, turn back, turn back, turn back." I ignored them. Somehow, turning back felt like giving up. Then I heard footsteps behind me, slow, careful, in rhythm with my heartbeat. I spun around. No one was there. But I could feel it. Someone, or maybe many, walking in step with me no matter where I moved. Panic hit me. I ran. I found a wider room, the lights flickering weakly above. The water here reached my waist, cold and black, reflecting the warped corridor behind me like a twisted mirror. Dozens of passengers stood along the walls, stiff and still. None of them moved when I approached, but their eyes followed me, unblinking. Then a voice came from the far corner, clear, trembling, familiar. "My sister, Tyler, don't look at them." My breath caught. I ran toward her. Her eyes were wide with fear, hair soaked, clinging to her pale face. She grabbed my hand, her skin freezing cold. "Listen to me," she said through chattering teeth. "They keep us here. No one leaves. Deck 13 doesn't let go." The brass key slipped from my pocket, hitting the wet floor with a sharp clang. The moment it did, Every passenger turned toward it in perfect unison. The air thickened. A deep, vibrating hum filled the room, something between metal grinding and water boiling. The world seemed to warp around me. Seconds stretched and snapped like broken film. Faces blurred. Doors twisted at impossible angles. I knew I had to act. I dove for the key, grabbed it, and sprinted toward the farthest door marked 1307. I jammed the key into an invisible lock. The door shuddered, then creaked open. Behind it, stairs leading upward. Normal stairs, clean wood, warm light. Relief washed through me, but deep down, I knew nothing about this place was normal. We ran anyway. Behind us, the sounds grew. Those dragging footsteps, the metallic moans, the whispers begging us to stop. The deck itself groaned, bending and stretching as if trying to drag us back. Water splashed up to our knees. The whole place seemed alive, angry. Finally, we stumbled through an exit onto deck 14. Bright sunlight poured through the windows. Crew members passed by, smiling calmly, pretending nothing had happened. I collapsed against the railing, gasping. My sister clung to me, shaking uncontrollably. "Tyler, it's gone," she whispered. I shook my head, trembling. "No, it never really leaves, does it?" Even as we walked away, the whispers still echoed faintly in my ears. Deep in my mind, I felt it. The pressure of the deck beneath us, bending, breathing, waiting. 3 knocks echoed faintly through the walls, distant but real. The brass key was gone from my pocket. I froze. The bright corridors suddenly felt fake, like painted illusions hiding something rotten underneath. My sister gripped my arm, trembling. Every creak, every whisper made my skin crawl. The key that led us to deck 13 was gone, and with it, any sense of control. We went straight to guest services. My voice shook as I tried to explain everything. The stairwell, the repeating doors, the water, the faces, the whispers. The clerk smiled politely, expression empty. "Sir, there is no deck 13 on this vessel." My pulse spiked. My sister's face went pale. "You saw it," she said, voice cracking. "We were there. People vanished on that deck." The clerk tilted her head slightly, still smiling. "Sir, you must be mistaken. Our ship goes from deck 12 to 14. Nothing unusual here." Behind her, a crew member walked past, perfect uniform, empty eyes. I glanced down at the counter's polished surface. In the reflection, I saw them, faces pressed against invisible glass, distorted shadows clinging to the walls. My heart raced. I whispered to my sister, "They're still here." We left guest services and made our way through the lower decks, but something was off. Each floor felt warped, hallways curved where they shouldn't. Stairs seemed longer, repeating endlessly. Door numbers started to duplicate, skipping in strange patterns. It felt like Deck 13's infection was spreading. Then it came again, the knocks. 3 slow, steady knocks from the walls around me. The sound rattled in my chest. I froze. The maintenance door ahead creaked open. The woman in the tattered crew uniform stepped out, her pale eyes locking onto mine. "You brought them," she whispered, her voice echoing like metal on metal. "The deck chooses, but it remembers who enters. Some leave, most don't." I stepped back, voice shaking. "Where's my sister?" She smiled faintly, a smile with no warmth. "She's learning to stay, and soon you will too. The deck always collects." Before I could move, the shadows surged from every doorway. Pale figures spilled out, silent and cold, reaching for us. My sister screamed. I grabbed for her hand, but they tore us apart. The brass key, gone for hours, suddenly appeared again in my palm, burning cold. I clutched it tightly. My instincts screamed to use it, but the staircase, the one that led us out before, was gone. The whispers closed in. "You can't leave. We wait. We remember." The water rose again, thick and freezing, swirling around my legs, my waist, my chest. Faces surfaced in it, passengers blank-eyed, their mouths slightly open. I shouted for help. Nothing. The intercom stayed silent. The halls twisted again, looping over themselves. Every turn led me back where I started. The ship was changing, rewriting itself. Deck 1. 3 wasn't gone. It was becoming everything. The last thing I remember was my sister's scream, the icy water rising over my head, and the 3 slow knocks echoing from everywhere and nowhere at once. Then, nothing. I woke up in my cabin. Morning sunlight poured through the curtains. My sister was gone. Crew members walked past, smiling as if the night never happened. On the pillow beside me lay the brass key engraved with the number 13. I touched it, and faintly, Deep inside my skull, I heard the knocks again. 3 of them, soft but relentless. I don't know if she's still somewhere on the ship or if Deck 13 ever truly existed. All I know is that every night, when the ship creaks and the waves press against the hull, I still hear the whispers. And the 3 knocks. They never stop. "Why are you pretending you don't know me?" That was the first thing she said. I was halfway down the promenade deck, the ocean breeze in my face, when a woman stepped out from behind a lifeboat and grabbed my wrist. Her nails dug deep into my skin. I stared at her, confused. I didn't know her, yet she said it like we'd spoken before. "My name's Aaron Keller. I'm 31, a paramedic from Portland, Oregon. After months of back-to-back shifts and too many sleepless nights, my sister convinced me to take a week-long cruise. I'm the kind of guy who fixes everyone else's problems, but never takes time for myself. She booked everything, handed me the ticket, and told me to vanish for 7 days. That night on deck was supposed to be peaceful. I had a plate of cold pizza, a cheap whiskey, and a plastic cup. For the first time in months, the noise in my head was quiet enough to think. That's when a stranger stopped me, like she'd been waiting. Her eyes darted around nervously, her lips cracked and dry as if she hadn't had water in days. She whispered, "They'll erase me if you keep ignoring me." I laughed, but awkwardly, thinking she was drunk or anxious, but the way she said it, it stuck in my chest. I pulled my hand away and hurried toward the atrium. When I looked back, she was gone. That should have been the end. But the next morning, she was there again, sitting across from me at breakfast. Same gray hoodie, same empty stare. The waiter even placed a plate in front of her like she was a regular passenger. I leaned forward and whispered, "Who are you?" She didn't answer. She just smiled, and through the noise of silverware and chatter, I swear I heard her voice inside my head instead of through my ears. Cabin 329. Midnight. My appetite vanished. Later that day, I went to reception and casually asked about cabin 329. The clerk frowned, typed for a moment, then said, "Sir, that cabin doesn't exist. Maybe you meant 239? I shook my head. I knew what I'd heard. Back in my room, I checked the deck map on the wall. The numbers went 320, 321, 322, all the way to 328, and then jumped straight to 330. No 329. That night I went there anyway. The hallway past 328 was unnaturally quiet. The carpet muffled every step, the air thick and heavy. Every door had its brass plaque centered perfectly, except one. Where 329 should have been, there was just a blank section of painted steel. No handle, no outline, nothing. But when I leaned closer, I heard faint scratching from behind it, like nails dragging across metal. My chest tightened. I took a step back. Then someone whispered my name, right there in the empty hallway. "Aaron." I froze. It was her voice. The wall rippled slightly like water. I stumbled back and ran for the stairwell. By morning, I tried to convince myself I'd imagined everything. The ship looked normal, families by the pool, live music, laughter. But I kept seeing her reflection in windows and glass doors. Not her, just her reflection, always watching. I didn't tell anyone. Maybe I thought they'd say I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had. But when I finally went to guest services and described her hair, her face, her hoodie, the clerk smiled politely and said, "Sir, no one by that description is on our manifest." Then, in a quieter tone, she added, "Please don't ask again." That was the first real warning I got, and I didn't listen. Those words, "Please don't ask again," kept echoing in my mind. Why was asking about her dangerous? I tried distracting myself by hitting the gym that afternoon. Rows of treadmills faced a wall of glass overlooking the ocean. I ran until my legs burned. For a while it helped, until I looked at the mirror across from me. She was there, running on the treadmill beside me. No sound, no movement, just her reflection, perfectly in sync with mine. My chest locked up. I yanked out my earbuds and looked beside me. Nothing. Empty treadmill. But in the mirror, she was still there. My legs buckled and I almost fell. A guy nearby stared at me but didn't say anything. I turned off the treadmill, sweating, shaking. When I looked again, she was gone. Later in my cabin, I told myself it was exhaustion, alcohol, stress. But what bothered me most was how the crew reacted. Like they were hiding something. I needed proof. That night, I waited outside 328. The hallway was dim and silent, the low hum of the engines beneath my feet. I waited almost an hour. Then came faint footsteps. A man in a crew uniform appeared carrying a clipboard. He paused at the blank wall where 329 should be. I swear I saw him knock 3 times. The wall shifted slightly, and he stepped inside like there was a door. Then it sealed shut again. I couldn't breathe. The next morning, I cornered a steward near the pool. "Cabin 329, I said. "I saw someone go in. Don't tell me it doesn't exist." His face went pale. "Sir, you should enjoy your vacation. Don't dig." I pushed harder. "Who is she? The woman in the gray hoodie? Why do you act like she isn't he?" His hands shook as he shoved towels onto a rack. He leaned close and whispered, "They don't let her leave. None of them leave." Then he walked off fast, looking terrified. By then, paranoia was eating me alive. I saw her everywhere, in reflections, in shadows, just out of reach. On the third night, I set up my phone secretly, pretending to text, camera aimed at the wall where 329 should be. An hour later, I heard faint scratching. The wall shimmered, and through my phone's screen, I saw a slit open, like melting paint. A shadow leaned forward. My screen glitched, static, covering the image. Then her voice came through the mic. "Aaron, let me out." My heart stopped. I dropped the phone. Later, when I checked the video, the footage was black. Only the audio survived. Her whisper again, "They'll erase me if you ignore me." I'm not the kind of person who posts stories online, but I started recording everything after that. My voice, my thoughts, every strange sound. If anything happens to me, at least there's a record. If you're hearing this, if you're watching, just subscribe. Not for me, but so this doesn't vanish like she did. If they can erase people from the passenger list, what's stopping them from erasing me too? The next morning at breakfast, I sat with my sister. She noticed how pale I looked. "Aaron, are you okay?" I told her everything. The woman, the wall, the hidden door. She stared at me like I'd lost it. "Cabin 329 doesn't exist." I begged her to come see. She finally agreed. We walked the corridor together. When we reached the spot, my stomach dropped, because now there was a door. Perfect brass plaque. 329. My sister frowned. "See? You must have missed it before." She reached for the handle. I grabbed her wrist. "Don't." But she'd already opened it. Inside was pitch black. No bed, no lights, no walls, just emptiness stretching forever. And something in that darkness moved. The space didn't just look dark, it swallowed the light. My sister gave a nervous laugh. "Weird. Whoa. Here's the furniture?" I couldn't speak. I wanted to slam the door, but she stepped inside. The light bent around her leg, vanishing into the void. "Stop!" I yanked her back. She stumbled into me, annoyed. "What is wrong with you?" Then a sound came from the dark. A wet, rattling breath, like someone struggling to breathe underwater. The door slammed shut on its own. We ran, not stopping until we reached the crowded atrium where a band played over drunken laughter. My sister glared at me. "What was that?" I had no answer. How could I tell her that something inside that room felt alive? She stormed off toward guest services. "Someone has to explain this." The clerk smiled politely as my sister demanded answers. "Cabin 329, she said. "We opened it." "What is that?" The clerk blinked once, typing. "I'm sorry, miss, there is no cabin 329 on this vessel." My sister turned to me, furious. "Did you hear that? We saw it." I nodded. The clerk's smile didn't change, but her eyes darted nervously, like someone was watching her. That night, my sister vanished. I woke up to 3 slow knocks at 2 a.m. Her bed was empty, her phone gone, a folded note left behind. In her handwriting, "Don't follow me." It called my name. I tore through the ship, begging the crew for help. Every one of them said the same rehearsed line. "Sir, there is no cabin 329 on this vessel." By 4 a.m., I was losing my mind. I went back to the hallway. The plaque was gone again, just a blank wall. Then I heard her voice, soft and close. "Aaron, come in." I slammed my fists against the wall until my knuckles bled. Crew members dragged me away, saying it was for my safety. They locked me in my room. The last thing I remember before falling into a half-sleep was the sound of dripping water in the dark. When morning came, the ship looked normal again. Sunlight through the curtains, cheerful announcements. But there was something new. On the dresser beside my phone was a brass key, number 329, engraved on it, and I knew then my sister had never left the ship. She was still in there. I held the key. It felt like it burned my skin. The hallway was empty, the engine's hum louder than ever. Every step toward that wall felt heavier. I pushed the key into the invisible lock. The wall shivered. A slit opened wider this time. I stepped through. Inside 329, the water reached my thighs. The darkness stretched forever. And I saw them, dozens of passengers standing silently, faces pale and empty, and in the middle stood my sister, her hair plastered to her face, eyes wide with terror. She reached out to me, her voice barely a whisper. "Aaron, they're everywhere." I stepped forward, but the water rose higher with every step I took, splashing up to my chest. Panic clawed inside me. I grabbed my sister's hand. It felt cold, unreal, almost like she was made of the same water trying to pull us down. A voice echoed behind me, familiar and terrifying, bouncing off invisible walls. "You shouldn't have opened it." I spun around and saw her, the woman in the gray hoodie, standing in the water. But now she looked taller, wrong, like something human pretending to be. Her smile stretched too wide, not touching her eyes. The passengers around us began to move, slow at first, then faster, forming a circle. Some reached out, their fingers brushing against me, icy, lifeless. My sister screamed, clutching me tight. Then I remembered the voice from the treadmill mirror. "They don't let her leave." I shouted, "What do you want from us?" The woman tilted her head slightly. "We're keeping balance. You and your sister. You crossed the wrong deck." I didn't understand what she meant. I just knew we had to escape. I lifted my sister onto my shoulders and ran toward the doorway. The water rose higher, fighting me, pulling at my legs. Each step felt heavier, like moving through quicksand. When we finally broke through the slit into the hallway, the door slammed behind us with a deafening crash. Silence followed. The lights flickered back to normal. The brass plaque that read 329 was gone. My sister gasped for air, trembling. I was drenched, my knees shaking so hard I could barely stand. "Did we make it?" she whispered. I nodded, but deep inside I knew the truth. We hadn't, because even then I could still hear it. 3 slow knocks, deep and deliberate, echoing through the walls of the ship. Then came a whisper, curling around me like smoke. "Next time, it won't let you leave." I tried calling guest services, the captain, anyone, but the PA system stayed dead silent. Crew members walked past me like I didn't exist. It was as if cabin 329 had never been real. I packed up the next morning and left at the very next port. But the sound followed me. Every creak in the floorboards, every tap in the pipes echoed that same rhythm. 3 knocks. I don't think I'll ever forget them, or her. Why is this hallway empty? The question left my mouth before I realized I was speaking. Even though the ship was warm, a strange chill ran through me. The engines hummed beneath my feet, steady and calm, but something about Deck 7 felt wrong. My name is Ethan Cole, a 35-year-old history teacher from Chicago. I came here to celebrate finishing my first book, a small local release, and to take a break from endless grading. I used to laugh at ghost ship stories. I'm a realist, logical, maybe too cautious. The Sea Monarch was enormous, bright lights reflecting off white steel walls. The pool deck glittered under the afternoon sun, and the dining hall smelled of coffee and fresh bread. Everything was normal. Too normal. It started small. A passenger at breakfast staring at me with an unreadable look before vanishing when I blinked. Then, a strange static hum from the announcement speakers that made my teeth vibrate. I blamed lack of sleep. Teachers rarely get much. But as night came, little things began to twist. Hallways curved the wrong way. Cabin numbers didn't match the ship's map. I once called the front desk to report a door left open down the corridor. The line went dead after a low hum. No one came. I hit the receiver, but it was useless. I thought others noticed too. Martha, an older woman, pointed out the window once. Only black water and fog. "Have you seen him?" she asked quietly. Before I could reply, she was gone. That night, I woke to 3 soft knocks on my cabin door. The hallway outside was empty, but on the floor lay a single lifeboat key. I had never seen it before. When I picked it up, I thought I saw a shadow slide across the deck outside, through the fog. Sleep became impossible. Every hallway felt alive, like the ship itself was breathing. I began keeping notes to stay sane, writing things like, "Hall's normal, no shadows at 10:15 p.m. But each morning, my notes changed, written in my handwriting, listing things I hadn't done yet. When it finally showed itself, I almost lost my mind. I ran into a tall, pale man in a soaked suit while heading to the observation deck. His eyes were black holes. He whispered my name, then vanished. My mind tried to explain it, mirrors, tricks of light, but my gut screamed danger. I grabbed a radio in the crew hallway, desperate for help. Static filled my ears, then faint whispers. "Ethan, stay." Don't leave. The ship was talking. Not the crew. The ship. I found a lifeboat and climbed in, my last chance. The ropes dropped and the boat touched the water. But instead of floating, it sank quietly, disappearing beneath the surface. The ship groaned like it approved. After that, I wandered endlessly. Every deck was stretched and warped, hallways looping into impossible shapes. Each familiar place, the dining hall, the pool, the lounge, had a distorted copy, twisted and endless. From somewhere in the dark, a soft laugh called my name, sweet, almost human, but always too far to reach. The ship wasn't louder or quieter by morning, it was watching. My name is Ethan Cole, and I'm still wandering the sea monarch, telling myself I'm not losing my mind. Breakfast looks normal, eggs, coffee, passengers chatting. But beneath it all, there's that strange, heavy energy. People move like mannequins, eyes empty, avoiding mine. I followed one of them today. A young man in a baseball cap, down a hallway I swear wasn't there before. The lights flickered, the corridor stretched too far, and I realized something. The ship doesn't want us to find the end. A cabin door opened at the very end of the hallway. Inside was nothing, only darkness and the faint smell of salt water. No bed, no furniture, just empty space that seemed to breathe. Then I heard something that froze me in place, my own voice whispering, "Ethan, come in." I took a small step forward, but fear made me stop. The next moment changed everything. The man in the baseball cap was gone. In his place stood an older man, smiling kindly and waving as if greeting an old friend. I remembered him from dinner. "Misplaced something?" he asked in a warm tone. But before I could reply, his face twisted, mouth stretching too wide, teeth grinding together, as his body melted into the fog that crawled across the floor like liquid. I ran toward the main deck, heart racing as the ship's PA system crackled to life above me. It wasn't music or announcements this time. It was my own thoughts, echoing back at me. "Curiosity never ends," it said. I needed a plan. I thought about the lifeboat. If I could just reach it, maybe I could escape. But the fog was heavier now, thick and solid like smoke I could touch. It coiled around my legs, slowing me down. I stumbled into the stairway, gasping. It should have led to the upper deck, but instead I found a new corridor, one that wasn't on any map. Doors lined the walls, each unmarked. Then I saw her. A woman appeared holding a travel bag. She looked exactly like a coworker from Chicago, someone I hadn't seen in over a year. Her eyes were wide, trembling. "Ethan, you shouldn't be here," she whispered. I asked her what she meant, but she bent forward, her voice breaking. "The ship isn't real. None of this is." And then she was gone. I finally reached the upper deck, and when I saw the lifeboat still hanging there, hope burned through my panic. I untied the ropes and climbed inside. For a moment, I believed I could escape this nightmare, but as soon as the boat touched the water, it didn't float. It sank silently into the black ocean. I looked down, realizing there were no waves, no stars above, no reflection of anything, just an endless void pretending to be the sea. My hands shook uncontrollably. The water wasn't real. The ocean itself was under the ship's control. I ran back to the crew corridor, desperate for help. I found the radio again. Static at first, then a faint voice. "Ethan, the ship watches. The ship knows." I slammed it down, terror boiling with anger. The ship was toying with me. It was aware. By evening, the halls had changed again. The passage I'd walked that morning was gone. Stairs twisted into impossible shapes. Doors appeared where walls had been. Every familiar place, the dining hall, pool deck, gym, all looked normal, but felt deeply wrong. I saw others too. Some were passengers I remembered, standing still, staring at nothing. Others were transparent, like echoes of those already consumed by the ship. When I blinked, one of them, a man reaching out toward me, vanished inches away from my hand. I understood then. I wasn't a survivor. I was being hunted. The ship fed on being watched, on fear, on people like me. Then I noticed a door. It was half open, unmarked, not on any map, with soft golden light glowing from within. It felt like an invitation. I walked closer, trembling, my breath shallow. The air grew thick with whispers, layered voices overlapping, calling my name. I reached out to touch the handle, but before my fingers could make contact, the door slammed shut on its own. I stood there, shaking, heart pounding, knowing it wasn't over. That hallway, the one that shouldn't exist, was still calling me. I'm Ethan Cole, 35 years old, and I've learned that nothing on the Sea Monarch behaves like reality. The floor shifts when I move. The corridors stretch endlessly no matter which way I go. By the third day, the strangeness had stopped being subtle. It was impossible to ignore. I passed the dining room, empty now, but every plate was perfectly set, the coffee cold. A family sat frozen mid-laughter, their faces smiling, but their eyes were hollow pits of darkness. They turned their heads toward me all at once. I blinked, and they vanished. Only the faint smell of burnt sugar lingered. I tried the stairs again, hoping moving up or down might help me escape. But every flight went on forever. My legs ached, burning with exhaustion. When I reached the upper deck again, the fog was thicker than ever, heavy like a living thing. That's when I saw him, Captain Reynolds, or something that looked like him. His eyes were deep black sockets, his uniform torn and dripping wet. "You shouldn't be here," he said softly, his voice echoing like it came through a tunnel. I tried to answer, but my own voice sounded slow, distorted. His reflection stepped closer, and then it spoke in a whisper that froze my blood. "Ethan, you're lost." I stumbled backward. The railing behind me was gone, replaced by a solid wall. Panic set in. I turned and ran along the deck, searching for a way out, but the fog came alive, swirling around me like a predator ready to strike. I found one last lifeboat and fumbled with the ropes, lowering it shakily into the still, black water, but there was no water, just emptiness waiting to swallow it whole. My heart hammered in my chest. Behind me I heard footsteps, fast, human, but not mine. I turned around. A man sprinted toward me, his face shifting rapidly between all the people I'd seen on this ship. Passengers, crew, strangers, changing like melting wax. I ran, weaving through twisting corridors, desperate to find the bridge or any stairwell. The ship itself was moving now. Walls stretched and curved, doors appeared and vanished, ceilings bent like breathing lungs. I stumbled into what looked like a crew lounge, but there was only one chair. On it lay a notepad, its pages flipping wildly, though there was no wind. I picked it up. The notes were written in my own handwriting, entries describing things I hadn't yet done. Fog approaches, voices call. Each line was a warning, a prophecy, or a trap. The last line read, "Boat sinks." My chest tightened. I remembered my phone, still in my cabin. Maybe I could call for help, the Coast Guard, anyone. I ran back, dodging shadows crawling along the walls. But when I got there, my phone was gone, erased. It hadn't just vanished. The ship had taken it. Then came the whispers, many voices speaking as one. "Ethan, choose, stay, leave, curiosity." My thoughts spun. I covered my ears, but the sound was inside me now. The ship was inside me. I ran again, breath sharp, vision spinning, and found another hallway. It looked normal this time. Warm lighting, carpeted floor, framed pictures on the walls. Hope sparked for a brief second. I heard laughter, real, human laughter. Voices of other passengers filled the air. Maybe, just maybe, I'd finally found my way out. I followed the sound, faster, desperate. Then the hallway curved and turned back on itself. The lifeboat I had failed to use before was right in front of me again. But this time, something was different. A tall, dark figure stood there, smiling. "You're free to leave," it said. My heart pounded as I gripped the rope tighter. "If I'm brave enough to step into the water," I whispered. Then curiosity, hope, and fear are all inside me. One step could save me, or destroy me forever. The fog around me thickened and moved like it was alive. It whispered my name and gave me a gentle push forward. I took a deep breath and stepped. When I hit the water, I felt nothing, no cold, no splash. It was like I'd fallen into air, thick and heavy, wrapping around me. I'm 35-year-old Ethan Cole, a history teacher and amateur photographer, and now I finally understand the Sea Monarch was never just a ship. The fog curled around me, alive and shifting. The lifeboat ropes vanished into thin air. I tried swimming, but the water didn't respond. My movements echoed back, slow and delayed. Maybe I wasn't sinking. Maybe the ship was rising. Then I heard a voice, strange and broken, calling from the mist. "Ethan, you can't leave, but you see." I opened my mouth to speak, but my words disappeared before I could make a sound. The fog began to take shape, faces of passengers, crew members, and others I didn't recognize. They surrounded me, watching. Some laughed softly, others whispered encouragement like I was being tested. I saw the captain, or what used to be him, standing at the edge of what looked like the deck. His arms were stretched out, his eyes empty, his body unnaturally tall. "Just choose," he said. "Leave and fade. Stay and understand." I reached for the lifeboat in panic. For a second, I felt hope. Maybe if I climbed in carefully, I could escape the twisted passengers, the endless corridors, the choking fog. I grabbed the rope and felt something pulling back, something living. It stretched into the mist like it didn't belong in this world. Then, out of the fog, a hand, my own hand, but not mine, grabbed my shoulder. Panic shot through me. When I tried to scream, the sound was stolen from my throat. My shadowed self whispered, "Why fight what can to be fought?" I kicked and thrashed, desperate to break free. The fog thickened, swallowing everything, the lifeboat, the deck, even the faraway hum of engines. It was like drowning in nothing. My arms moved as if I were underwater, but there was no water, only air that pressed back. Around me, passengers stood still. None helped, none spoke. Then, through the blur, I saw something small, a cabin door at the edge of the fog. It was half open, light spilling out. Familiar, but impossible. I ran toward it, my limbs heavy. The whispers followed me. Curiosity brought you. Curiosity keeps you. Part of me wanted to slam the door and run, but another part, the part that always needed to know, pushed it open. Inside was nothing, just warm, soft light, still and calm. I stepped through. The fog didn't follow. The whispers stopped. The strange weightlessness came again, but now it felt distant, like I was floating outside myself, watching. Through the doorway, I could see the ship twisting, the passengers caught in endless loops, walking, talking, repeating forever. That's when I realized I hadn't escaped. I'd just changed my place. Now I could see everything, like the ship had given me a new role. I was part of its memory. I was alive, but only to watch. If you're listening, please subscribe to Eerie Hour. It helps keep stories like this alive, because now I finally understand. The ship doesn't take people, it chooses them. It doesn't destroy, it transforms. It keeps those who vanish, absorbing them into its endless reflection. I've changed, but I'm still here. Still Ethan. Still watching. Every new traveler becomes another story waiting to unfold. I see them sometimes. New passengers laughing, unaware. The fog circles their feet. The lights flicker. A door creaks open. And I wonder, will they see me? Will they notice what's just beyond normal? Because the ship remembers everything. It always does. And now, I'm part of it. Why does it sound like the ocean is inside the walls? That was the first thought that hit me when I walked into me. I came in, not outside, but inside. As if seawater was pressing against the walls, begging to get through. My name is Daniel Mercer. I'm 36, from Columbus, Ohio, and I work as an insurance claims adjuster. It's a dull job that's made me question my entire life. This cruise was supposed to reset me. I booked it alone after a breakup left me empty and restless. 7 days at sea, fresh air, sunrises. Maybe I'd come back feeling like myself again. I'm not the adventurous type. I'm cautious, careful, the kind who checks if the stove's off twice before leaving home. A cruise seemed perfect, safe, organized, or so I thought. The first day was everything you'd expect. Music, laughter, endless food, sunscreen in the air. The PA voice chirped every hour with news about happy hour or shows. The ship's constant hum became background noise, but the hallways, they bothered me. Every corridor looked the same, like a maze without end. Twice I took the wrong turn and felt like the hallway had moved. Little things felt off. A wet doorknob when the air was dry, a missing cabin number, a crew member who hesitated too long when I asked for directions. I told myself it was nothing, just confusion. But that night, lying in bed, I heard it. 3 knocks. Not on the door, on the wall, the one that should have backed against another cabin. I waited, expecting laughter or another sound. Nothing, just silence. It lasted too long. I forced myself to ignore it, to sleep. That was my last peaceful night. The next day I tried to shake it off. Pool, buffet, pretending everything was normal. But the unease grew heavier. When I asked at reception about the cabin next to mine, the woman paused before answering. "Of course, sir," she said too quickly. hiding the logbook. That hesitation haunted me. That night, I noticed the hallway lights buzzing faintly, like they were fighting off shadows. A little girl passed me, humming an off-key tune. When I turned, she was gone. The elevator incident came next. I stepped in on deck 7, pressed 4, doors closed. But when they opened, it wasn't deck 4. Everything looked wrong. Carpets, numbers, even the air felt thicker. I pressed lobby over and over. Same hallway. Silent except for the engine hum. Louder now. Deeper. When I finally got back to deck 7, I swore I'd never ride alone again. That night, the sound came again. A single, heavy thud, shaking the wall beside my bed. I pressed my ear against it, heard gurgling water, close, too close, like the ocean was right behind the metal trying to get in. Panic set in, but I stayed frozen, too afraid to move. The third night, everything changed. I woke at 3:17 a.m. My nightstand was soaked. Phone, book, everything dripping with seawater. No leaks, no spills, just water that shouldn't have been there. The room stank of salt. I ran into the hallway. The carpet squished under my feet. A man in a bathrobe shuffled by, leaving wet footprints, never looking at me. When I turned, he was gone. The elevator mirror lagged behind my reflection, twitching when I didn't move. When the doors opened, the atrium was empty. Glasses left on tables, a child's flip-flop alone. Then I heard it, a whisper circling the space. I looked up. In the reflection on the glass wall, dozens of soaked gray figures stared down at me, empty sockets. When I turned, the balcony was empty, but the reflections were closer. I ran. Deck 7 was red-lit and trembling. Wet footprints stretched ahead of me, ending at cabin 742. The doorknob dripped with seawater. I touched it, and the door opened into black, endless water. A woman floated there, smiling through blue lips. Her eyes snapped open. Her hand lunged. Water gushed as she reached. The ship groaned. Lights flickered. Shadows moved without form. I ran through rising water into a stairwell that had no end. Below me, the man in the bathrobe stood waiting, water spilling from his mouth like a broken fountain. I ran until my lungs burned. His choking gurgles followed, echoing through the metal spiral. When I burst onto deck 9, the air hit cold and sharp. The halls were flooding, doors banging open, lights stuttering. And then I saw her. A woman in a glittering gown, dripping wet, standing still in the middle of the corridor. Her hair clung to her face, her eyes empty, watching me. Her skin was gray, swollen and wrinkled, like it had soaked in the ocean for years. She tilted her head slowly, her neck cracking like something half-broken, and whispered in a voice that didn't sound human at all. Cabin 419. Her long, bloated finger lifted and pointed behind me. When I turned, the door was there. Cabin 419. The number gleamed new and bright on the plaque, but I knew I'd walked this hallway many times before. That door had never existed. The woman's reflection lingered in the glass panel of the door even after she vanished. Her body was gone, but in the reflection, she leaned closer, her face splitting open, her teeth sharp and jagged like coral. Every part of me screamed not to go near it, but the sound of rushing water came from behind. It was getting louder, flooding the corridor. I grabbed the cold handle. My hand stuck for a second before it turned, and the door creaked open. Inside wasn't a cabin. It was a theater. Red velvet seats stretched out under a chandelier that dripped with condensation. The air was heavy, thick with the smell of salt and rot. Every seat was filled. Dozens of soaked, pale passengers sat motionless, their heads tilted, mouths half open. Their eyes, bloated, milky, and swollen, snapped toward me as soon as I entered. The door slammed behind me, sealing me inside. A pale spotlight flicked on at the stage, and there he was, the man in the bathrobe. His throat made wet, bubbling sounds as seawater poured out and puddled around his bare feet. He lifted a trembling hand and motioned for me to come closer. The passengers began to clap. It wasn't normal clapping. It was wet, uneven, the sound of flesh slapping soaked flesh. Water splashed with every movement. The chandelier above shook, spraying droplets that felt ice cold on my face. The ship groaned so loudly that it made my bones rattle. I stepped back toward the door, but when I reached for it, there was no door anymore, just a wall slick with black mold. The bathrobe man stumbled forward, water spilling from his eyes and mouth like broken faucets. When he tried to speak, no real words came out, only gurgling sounds that twisted into meaning in my head. "You came back," I somehow understood him say. Then, all at once, Every drowned body in the theater turned toward me. They began to rise, stiff and jerking, streams of salt water running off them, pooling at their feet. The sound of their movement was like waves crashing closer and closer. They shuffled forward, dragging their legs, mouths gaping wide as water poured from their throats. The carpet darkened with every step, soaked in brine. My legs locked, my throat closed tight. The only sound I could hear was the slapping of their wet hands, growing louder and louder. I tried to scream, but when I opened my mouth, salt burned my tongue. My teeth ached. I could taste the ocean inside me. The bathrobe man reached me first. His hand landed on my shoulder, so cold it felt like knives driving through bone. His empty eyes wept endless streams of water down his gray cheeks. He leaned close until his lips brushed my ear. His gurgling voice came out strangely calm. "You can't leave until someone takes your place." And then, everything stopped. The water sounds, the movement, the moaning, it all froze. The bodies stood still mid-step, their heads tilted, their eyes staring through me. The chandelier dripped slowly, each drop echoing in the silence. The ship's low hum deepened into a heavy, rumbling growl, like it was aware of me. My heart pounded in my skull as my mind spun. Who was I supposed to give them? Before I could think, the bathrobe man shoved something into my hand, a small brass key. Cabin 409. The number was carved deep, the metal cold and wet. I blinked, and everything changed. The theater was gone. I was standing alone again in a narrow, dim hallway. The carpet squished under my shoes. Lights buzzed faintly overhead. The key pressed into my palm like it was alive. Behind me was only a wall. No door, no seats, no passengers, no bathrobe man. Just the quiet whisper of the sea sliding through the vents. I stumbled back to my cabin, shaking so hard I could barely walk. My heart felt like it was punching through my ribs. When I looked at the clock by the bed, it said 3:17 a.m. The sheets were perfectly dry, my bag untouched, my shoes clean, like nothing had ever happened. But there it was, the brass key, cabin 419, lying on my pillow, glistening with moisture. The rest of the cruise passed in a blur. Laughter at breakfast, clinking glasses at dinner, sunlight on the pool deck. Everyone looked normal, smiling, carefree. But at night, I heard it, the faint, wet sound of gurgling outside my door, drops of water hitting the carpet where no leak should be. And one night, I saw it, just one wet footprint leading away down the hallway toward cabin 419. I never followed it. When the ship finally docked, I left everything behind, clothes, luggage, even my passport. I walked off that ship with nothing but the clothes on my back and the brass key hidden tight in my fist. I haven't been near water since. I barely sleep anymore. Sometimes at night I feel that key shift in my pocket, tugging, like it's trying to pull me somewhere. If you're listening, please subscribe to Eerie Hour. It helps keep stories like this alive, because I know one night soon someone will knock on my door, hand me another key, and whisper those same words I heard on that cursed ship. You can't leave until someone takes your place. Don't go below deck 3. That was the first thing the old man said to me on embarkation day. His voice was rough and shaky, but his grip on my arm was strong. He leaned in close, so close I could smell salt and tobacco on his breath. Then, just as quickly as he appeared, he vanished into the crowd of passengers dragging their luggage and laughing with drinks in hand. I thought he was just some strange old sailor, nothing more. But later, lying in my cabin with the ship's engines thudding under the floor, I wished I had listened to him. My name's Michael Graves. I'm 34 and work in HVAC repair back in Cincinnati. I'm not the type to take cruises. In fact, I hate the ocean. Too wide, too deep, too empty. But my sister Alyssa had begged me for months to join her and her husband on this trip. "You never take vacations," she said. "You need this, Mike." Maybe she was right. The past year had been rough. Job stress, a long breakup, sleepless nights filled with whiskey instead of rest. I figured a week at sea might clear my head. Still, the ocean made my stomach twist. Even when we left Miami, I had to grip the railing just to stay steady while the water stretched endlessly around us. The ship was huge, 12 decks, over 1,000 cabins, theaters, pools, and endless shiny corridors that smelled faintly of chlorine and metal polish. It felt like a floating city. But there was something strange about the lower decks, the ones marked crew only. The signs looked newer, cleaner, almost too clean, like someone wanted to make sure no one wandered down there by accident. I didn't think much of it, until that first night. I woke at 2:40 a.m. to a noise, metal groaning, straining under pressure. Then, 3 sharp knocks, coming from below my floor. My cabin was on deck 4. Below me were only crew areas and machinery. I sat up, my heart hammering, telling myself it was just Pip. He is expanding. Then came the voice, muffled, wet, bubbling through the vent. Michael! I froze. My sister was asleep 3 cabins down. Nobody else knew my name here. And that voice, it didn't sound human. It sounded like someone half drowning, gasping between syllables. I pressed my ear to the vent. Only dripping water answered. That was my last normal night aboard. I didn't sleep again. I sat in the chair, lights on, staring at the vent until dawn. The hum of the engines pulsed through the floor like a heartbeat inside steel. By breakfast, I told myself I was imagining things. Crew's cabins weren't soundproof. Maybe it was just crew talking through the vents. Still, when I met Alyssa at the buffet, she noticed right away. You look awful, she said, buttering her roll. Nightmares again? I didn't want to tell her about the voice. She'd laugh, then worry herself sick. So I just said, couldn't sleep, engines are loud down there. Her husband Mark looked up from his phone. Should have booked higher. Deck 7's quiet as a hotel. Down where you are, right above the crew decks, you'll hear all kinds of banging. Yeah, I muttered, stabbing my eggs. Probably pipes. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. That afternoon, wandering the ship alone, I saw something strange. Near the aft stairwell on deck 4, tucked in the corner, there was a door. Plain gray steel with the words, Crew Only, written on it. That wasn't strange. There were plenty of those doors around the ship. What caught my attention was the keypad beside the handle, glowing green in the dim hallway light. It wasn't a normal lock. I lingered a little too long, pretending to scroll on my phone, when suddenly a crew member appeared out of nowhere. He was tall, wearing a crisp navy uniform, with a polite smile that didn't reach his eyes. Sir, guests aren't allowed back here, he said in an accent I couldn't cue. Light place. Maybe Eastern European. Just looking for the elevators, I mumbled. He didn't answer, just kept watching me until I walked away. When I turned back down the hall, he was still there, standing completely still, blocking that door with his body. That night, the knocking came again. 3 hard knocks from beneath my floor. My heart jumped. I dropped to my knees, pressing my ear against the carpet. The sound came again, slow, measured, not random, and then a voice followed. Michael. It was clearer this time. A woman's voice, watery, drowning, like it was bubbling up through the ocean itself. I bolted upright, stumbled out into the corridor barefoot, trying to make sense of it. A family walked past me, laughing, towels over their shoulders, heading to the pool. Nobody else seemed to hear it, but I could smell salt, faint but real, like seawater soaking the carpet. The next day, I tried to shake it off, forced myself into normal cruise stuff, shuffleboard, trivia, karaoke night. But no matter where I went, something felt off. In the theater, a crew usher leaned close when scanning my card. I swear I heard him whisper, "Below the waterline." When I looked up, startled, he was just smiling as if nothing happened. At dinner, the lights flickered twice. Nobody even looked up, but under my chair, I heard it, sloshing, like water moving beneath the floor. Later that evening, passing guest services, I overheard 2 officers whispering in low tones. I only caught 2 words before they noticed me. Containment breach. Deck 0. Deck 0. My blood turned cold. There was no Deck 0. That night, the knocking didn't come. I thought maybe it was over. I almost believed it. But at exactly 3:00 a.m., I woke to the sound of running water. I stepped out of bed. The carpet was soaked, my toes pressed into the wet floor. A thin stream of water was sliding down the hall toward that same aft stairwell. I followed it. The farther I went, the colder it got. My breath fogged in front of me. The stream led straight to that gray door marked Crew Only. The keypad glowed green. Then I heard it again. Her voice, clear and right behind the door. Michael, open it. The keypad beeped, unlocking itself. I froze. The door swung open slowly. Behind it wasn't machinery or a hallway. It was a stairwell spiraling down into blackness, one swaying light bulb swinging above, the air thick with the smell of rot and seawater. I should have run. I should have called Alyssa. But I didn't. I put one foot on the stairs and went below the waterline. The air changed as soon as I crossed the threshold. Damp, heavy, tasting like salt. Every step I took groaned under my weight like the ship itself wanted me to go back. The door behind me slammed shut on its own, trapping me. The lone bulb swung overhead, shadows twisting on the walls like they were breathing. I counted the steps, 20, 30, 40, still no bottom. By the time I reached 67, my legs burned and the air was wet against my skin. My shoes squished on the concrete as I stepped onto a landing that shouldn't have existed. Ahead stretched a long, wide corridor, nothing like the polished decks above. It looked industrial, raw, with rusted pipes dripping brown water and mold crawling up the walls. Dim lights flickered under wire cages. Somewhere in the dark, I heard a steady thump, 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 like distant machinery. But this wasn't part of the ship meant for anyone. I shouldn't have been there. Still, I walked forward. My breathing echoed louder than the engines. Then I saw it. A single wet footprint on the floor, human and bare, leading deeper. I followed. Every instinct begged me not to. The hallway opened into a wide room flooded ankle-deep with water. Old deck chairs floated lazily. A life preserver drifted by. On the far wall, written in dripping black paint, were the words, "Below the waterline, they wait." The words bled down the wall like veins. A whisper filled the air, echoing off the walls. "Michael." My blood ran cold. I spun around. No one was there, but the water rippled like something had moved through it. Then I saw her. A woman standing waist-deep in the water at the far end. Her hair was stuck to her face, her skin pale and bloated, her sundress clinging to her like wet paper. Her eyes locked on mine. She opened her mouth, and seawater gushed out instead of words. I couldn't breathe. My chest seized, even though the water barely touched me. She raised a trembling hand and pointed behind me. I turned, and the corridor was gone. In its place stretched endless rows of identical passenger doors, hundreds of them, every single one marked with the same number, then 499. My pulse roared in my ears. I stumbled backward and hit something hard. I looked down. A brass key floated in the water, shining dully. Cabin 419. The numbers were etched deep, like scars. When I reached for it, the water surged upward, hitting me like a wave. I fell, gasping as icy water filled my mouth, my nose, my ears. I kicked, but the hallway vanished. The ship was gone. I was sinking, down through black water, no light, no surface. Faces drifted around me, pale and hollow. Passengers, crew, children. Their mouths opened in silent screams. Hands, so many cold hands, grabbed my wrists and ankles, pulling me deeper. The pressure crushed my chest. Then, through the dark, a white light burst open. I was back in my cabin, on the floor, dry. The key to cabin 419 lay neatly on my pillow. I stared at it for a long time, shaking. This wasn't a dream. It wasn't imagination. Something lived below the waterline, something the crew was hiding, and it wanted me. I didn't tell Alyssa. I couldn't. She'd either laugh, or worse, believe me, and go looking herself. So I went to guest services, tried to explain about the sounds, the water, the locked door. The woman at the desk just smiled kindly and typed as I talked. "We'll look into it, sir," she said, her voice calm, practiced. She handed me a card. Maintenance request logged. I turned to leave, but then I heard her whisper softly under her breath, almost too quiet to catch. "You shouldn't have gone below." My whole body went cold. That was the moment I knew. I wasn't getting off this ship. Above deck, everything looked perfect. Music, cocktails, laughter under the stars. But beneath it all, something waited, watching. Something that had already marked me. That night, I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt those freezing hands dragging me down again. The brass key glimmered on my nightstand, mocking me with its dull light. Cabin 419 didn't exist on any deck plan. I checked 3 times. At breakfast, everything on the ship looked normal, alive. Families filled their plates with waffles, kids ran around with pool towels, and cheerful announcements about bingo echoed from the atrium. But I couldn't stop noticing the wet footprints that stretched through the hallway outside my cabin. No one else seemed to see them. I needed to know what was going on, so I started asking questions, quietly, casually. A bartender on the Leo deck, a cabin steward, and even an older woman who looked like a cruise regular. Every time I mentioned cabin 419, their reaction was the same. A short pause, an uneasy smile, and a fast change of topic. It was as if I had spoken a forbidden name. That evening, Alyssa wanted to go to the ship's theater show. I didn't want to raise suspicion, so I agreed. The stage was bright, filled with glittering lights and performers singing some upbeat medley from the 80s, but halfway through, I saw her, row F, seat 19, the woman from the flooded corridor. Her hair was dry now, her dress spotless. She clapped along with everyone else, but her eyes knee. Ver left mine. My body froze. Alyssa nudged me, laughing, asking why I looked so pale, but I couldn't answer. When I blinked, the seat was empty, yet the cushion was soaked, dripping with seawater. After the show, I told Alyssa I needed some air and slipped away. My feet moved on their own, leading me down to deck 2 near the service corridors. That's when I heard it, a faint voice singing through the vents, a lullaby, the same one my mother used to hum when I was little. My stomach turned cold. I followed the sound through a half-open staff-only door. The narrow hallway smelled of damp metal and mold. Ahead of me, 2 crew members whispered quietly. I hid behind a trolley and listened. "We can't hold it much longer," one said. "The water line keeps rising. Captain says keep the passengers calm. No one mentions 419. And the ones who hear it? They've already been chosen." One of them looked back suddenly, and I ran before they saw me. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would break through my ribs. When I got back to my cabin, Alyssa was asleep. I stood in the dark, staring at the key again. My hand shook as I picked it up. The ship shuddered once, deep and heavy, as if something enormous brushed against its hull. The lights flickered. Then came a new sound, a knock, slow and deliberate, 3 times. I crept closer, every nerve screaming, and pressed my ear to the door. Silence. When I finally opened it, the hallway was empty, but at my feet lay an envelope, soaked in salt water. Inside was a piece of folded paper. The words were faint, smeared as if written underwater. "Midnight, deck below the waterline. Bring the key." I sat on the floor, trembling, holding the note in one hand and the key in the other, because now I knew this wasn't over. It was just beginning. Midnight came faster than I wanted. The ship's usual noise, the laughter, the glasses clinking, had gone still. The hallways felt deserted, even though I knew people were still around. My fingers kept brushing the brass key in my pocket, its sharp edges digging into my palm like it was alive. The path the note described wasn't on any map. I found myself in a crew stairwell, moving lower and lower. The walls were sweating with condensation. Water dripped down the steps, pooling at my feet. The deeper I went, the colder the air became until I could see my breath. At the bottom, I found a heavy door marked "Authorized Personnel Only." It wasn't locked. The smell hit first, salt water, rot, and something metallic underneath. Beyond the door stretched a long corridor half filled with dark water. The floor sloped downward, waves slapping at my shoes. Buzzing lights flickered above me, their reflections rippling on the surface. Then I noticed the numbers painted on the walls. 419, again and again, each one smeared and dripping as if freshly written. My mind screamed to turn back, but something, fear or curiosity, pulled me forward. At the end was a hatch. The key slid in perfectly. When I turned it, the metal groaned like it hadn't moved in years. Water burst through the edges, splashing around my ankles. Beyond it was a massive chamber, wrong in every way, like a hidden part of the ship no one was meant to see. Dozens of people stood waist deep in the water. Their faces were pale, eyes open but lifeless. Crew uniforms, dinner clothes, swimwear, it didn't matter. Some looked freshly drowned, others decades old, and in the center stood the woman, her gown clinging to her body, her soaked hair hanging like seaweed. She raised one trembling hand and pointed at me. "You opened it," she said, her voice layered, echoing like several people speaking at once. "Now you'll never leave." The crowd began to move, not toward me, but around me, circling. The water climbed higher, up my chest, cold and heavy. I backed against the hatch, but it had sealed shut. One of them brushed my arm, his skin pale and bloated. Another grabbed my wrist, icy fingers pressing hard enough to grind bone. I screamed, kicked, tried to fight, but the water kept rising. Then the intercom crackled to life above us. "Attention passengers, please remain calm. Minor flooding has been contained. All activities will resume shortly." The calm, practiced voice echoed over the horror swallowing me. The woman's eyes glowed faintly as she leaned closer, the water now at her neck. "This ship doesn't sail the sea anymore," she whispered. "It sails the dead." The lights went out. I don't remember what happened after that, only waking on the cabin floor, drenched, lungs burning like I'd drowned. The key was gone. Alyssa was gone. No one remembered she'd ever been there. Her name wasn't on the passenger list. Her suitcase was gone too. It was like she never existed. I ran to the reception desk, shouting for answers. The clerk just smiled politely. Sir, perhaps you should rest. We don't have a cabin 419. We never did. I swear I can still hear the water in my ears when I sleep. The lullaby hums through the pipes, and sometimes when the engines rumble just right, I hear it again. The knock, 3 times.